Hey guys, Coach 2J is here talking about the front box squat for the next Thrivestry strength focus. So let's get into it. So this is a different type of squat, box squat, than most people think of when they think of box squats. Box squats were originally used a lot by powerlifters, and they're doing their very wide stance and just going just below parallel. But what we've done here is we've created this squat variation of the squat to help with regular front squats and a lot of the other things that front squats help. There's also an added benefit to the first pull on the clean and the snatch. So let's talk a little bit about it. So the height of the box is dependent upon people's leg length and some of their mobility. So if you actually look, I'm about 6'4", but I've got short legs and a long torso. So my box is around 10 or 11 inches. And what I'm really looking for on the box height is basically being able to go below parallel, well below parallel, an inch or two above bottoming out. So if I go no box, you can see how I'm flexible enough to go all the way down to here. When I do my front squats, I get a little bounce. This is an inch or two above that, right? My stance is going to be my normal squat stance, front squat stance. So a more narrow kind of Olympic lifting squat stance, and of course the bar in the front rack position. Okay, so you can see from right away that this is a much lower variation of the box. Now we are going to do a pause, and I'll talk about the tempo in a minute. The reason why this is so good for front squats is because we're going to pause on the box and not plop through a very controlled descent and a pause, and then we lose a lot of that stretch reflex, so we have to come up from a dead stop. Well, what other sort of things do we do when we're starting from a low position, like the snatch, where we have to do start from a dead pull, or the clean, right? When we're doing a very upright first pull in the clean. Not everybody snatches or cleans like this with the low hips, upright torso, but it still does help generate that power in that first pull when we're getting that bar past the knees. And so the front box squat tends to be really good for correcting people whose hips shoot up on the first pull. So what we'll do is you'll have someone unrack the bar, they'll step back. You can see you can use bumpers. I actually like to use the small boxes too. We'll turn them diagonal so that if they have to, they can kind of look down and see that they're over it. Their heels are going to find the box. They're going to get everything tight and organized. And what we're really looking for is about a 2 second down, 1,000, 2 1,000, down, 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, and then when we're ready, it's up. Boom. Now, what we want to make sure we don't do is plop hard, boom, because that's really dangerous for the back. We also want to make sure that we're using loads light enough to where we don't really need to bail, because this is kind of a dangerous position to be bailing from. And the other things we want to keep in mind is that as we come down on the box, we're going to keep our core maximally contracted. So the trunk is in full contraction, inner abdominal pressure, maximal. Our legs can be 50%, so they can go down to 50% or higher. So as low as 50%, but no lower. You might see people kind of have to move their legs around if they need to readjust a little bit. But as people get more comfortable with this, we shouldn't see that. So the legs are still pushing somewhat, and then we're coming up. Now, the biggest thing we don't want to see is the forward kind of to get off, right? If someone's doing this, the weight is probably too heavy. So we want to make sure that they're coming down and coming up without that forward lean. Now, one of the reasons why this works so well, especially for beginners, is because we can break the squat up into 2 movements. Anytime we can slow something down, it's going to make it easier for them to learn. So the idea here is by turning the down, where they can be thinking about, they can be thinking about where their head's at, or what their elbows are doing. They can be thinking about, where their knees are tracking, things like that. On the way down, and then they're pausing, and then contracting, and thinking about something else on the way up. So on the way up, it might be knees. Maybe don't lean forward. It might be bring the hips underneath as you start to stand. And so you can give people those types of details as if it was 2 separate movements rather than just going down and up. Now, one variation that someone had a request recently about was for people who can't go very low, like they're barely scraping the parallel, what you can do is you can add more plates to where they where it's a reach for them, right? So they can still use a load, but what they're probably going to do is they might go, okay, oh, that's a stretch for me for whatever reason. And then when they can do like 3 at that while maintaining good form, but just going to that depth, then you have them do the same load. So let's say it was a woman working on her 85-pound squat. Well, you might have her now do 85 pounds for singles, but lower. So remember, we can always adjust the load. Everyone knows about adjusting the load, but we can use depth as our next progression. So they're still getting a strength stimulus because the weight's significant. Instead of having them do super light weights and forcing them to go much lower, you can have them use a heavier load that's going to give them a little bit of a strength challenge. And then we can get lower and lower on the depth, and so they can work on their mobility, and they can work on activating the right muscles to maintain the postures that we need. So that was the other variation. This is much more rare. You know, most people should be able to go fairly low, but again, you have those people that have real mobility restrictions. You can just have them start higher up at the heavier load and then work their way down. But everybody else should be the same box height for the entire strength focus. And so that is our front box squat.